Good morning. Good Friday morning. Another week has gone by, and I know quite a few of you are probably not joining me live this morning if you're attending ThelimaCon, which is starting today and going through the weekend, and I'll be presenting via remotely anyway, two presentations tomorrow and Sunday. But I'm still here, and I'm not on the East Coast doing it live. Hopefully in 2 years, when the next ThelimaCon rolls around, I'll be more confident to step on an airplane and join my fellow Thelemites at that event. And I think there'll also be a Noticon in Denver this year, and I hope to attend that live also. Be that as it may, I hope you have a great weekend. It's a beautiful weather here in Sacramento for a change. Not too hot, a little chilly at night, but anyway, I'm very keeping very busy nonetheless on these projects here. Yesterday, sort of as a comment on a posting that the great modern living magician and scholar Stephen Skinner mentioned something that I'm in just total agreement with, but about Rose being actually the voice box that gave voice to Iwas when Crowley received the Book of the Law. I don't think it's controversial in the slightest. So I wanted to say a few words about operators, magical operators, and receivers. Now, if you're familiar with the Book of Abramelin, or in its first appearance, it was called The Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. We have a description by Abraham the Jew of various magical techniques of medieval magicians. And mostly in the context of, this is all the stuff I studied while I was, trying to find the supreme magic of Abramelin. So it was stuff that magicians were doing in those days. And one of them was involved two individuals. And we could roughly call them operator and receiver. In a couple of the techniques that Abramelin describes, the operating magician is responsible for the invocations, the banishings, purifications, consecrations of all the preliminaries, and is responsible. He is doing the magic. It's his or her magic. Okay. The magician is doing all of the heavy lifting and all of the preliminary things, including the invocation of the god for whom the magician is the representative, and the evocation of the particular spirit or spiritual force, either elementary or planetary or zodiacal or whatever. So he's in charge. It's his magic. He's going for the information. And in many cases such as this, it is a matter of doing magic for information. Alternately, magic to go do something. how do I curse my neighbor's cow? How do I get him or her to fall in love with me? How do I, okay. But it's the magician that calls up the spirit. Let's just keep it to that. And, but the medieval magicians ran into the same problems and challenges that modern magicians do. You do all of this stuff, but I don't see a spirit. I did all of this work. I'm all dressed up in my magical robes, but it seems like I've got no place to go. I'm not seeing a vision. I'm not seeing a spirit. I want it to pop up like a holographic ectoplasmic puff of smoke so I can talk to him, just like in the Faust movies. And I'm not seeing it. So that is indicative of the magician having the will to evoke a spirit and evoking a spirit, and by all intents and purposes, he succeeds, but he's not seeing the result of his success. And put it in more modern psychological terms, the magician's left hemisphere of his rational scientific side of his brain is so energized and so focused that it is completely overshadowing the receptive part that would actually be sensitive to the result of his operation, his or her operation. So, in a sense, the magician hires a right hemisphere. And in examples given by Abramelin, it's easier for an innocent child, children who see spirits, who grow up, who have to, as they're growing up, have to train themselves not to see spirits, not to see elementals, not to see fairies, not to get a child before they've learned not to see spirits, and have them in partnership with you. Now, obviously, that's not going to work today, okay? And it probably shouldn't have, it shouldn't have worked back. It may work magically, but it certainly doesn't work morally. Because can you imagine what that's doing to a child's psyche? But anyway, but the theory of it is you hire a right hemisphere. You do the magic. The child looks into the triangle, or the child looks into the crystal ball, or the child looks into the mirror. And the magician writes down the child's impressions. What do you see? What do you say? Okay. Now, moving ahead a few years to the practitioners of Goetic magic or Solomonic magic, evocation. The way it's laid out in things like the Greater and Lesser Key of Solomon, which so many of us are familiar with, it appears that you're expecting to see the demon appear in a puff of smoke right in the triangle so you could talk to it. And in earlier drawings of the Goetic or Solomonic circle, you see a triangle and a circle. The magician stands in the triangle. Outside of the triangle, or outside, the magician stands in the circle, And outside of the circle is a triangle with the spirit's sigil in it. The magician has the sigil on the magician as well to link the two. But in early designs that have survived the years, the circle inside the triangle is painted black. Now, the great modern living magician, Carol Polk Runyon, was poring over those manuscripts 40 years ago, and it dawned on him that some of those notes actually say the mirror. And a light bulb went off over Polk's head and said, no, there is a black magic scrying mirror in the triangle. And the demon really does appear in the mirror. If any of you have even gazed for 3 minutes into a magic mirror under nice lighting, and you stare at the reflection of your own face in the magic mirror, in no time at all, if you lock onto your own eyes, in no time at all, your face disappears. But the eyes come back. And around the eyes, you see very often a reptilian kind of... Now, don't get me going off on David Icke or any of that stuff, shit. Nevertheless, a different face appears in the mirror, and it gives you a tangible, objective center of consciousness for you to then bounce your questions on, or bounce your thank you for appearing, okay, and you test the spirit is how you need to test it so that you feel confident you got what you got. Then you give it its charge and send it on its way. And it fulfills all of the advertising. It's Goetic magic as advertised. The spirit appears in the mirror, gets its instructions. You actually kind of see it with the kind of the mystified cones and rods of your own eye, and the link is made. It was brilliant. Polk Runyon sort of latched onto that and really took that ball and ran with it in the 20th century and early 21st century. And so he's made some videos and things like that, and people complain that sometimes that the videos are overly dramatic and corny. Yeah, maybe. But they're the real deal, guys. So yeah, I don't want to hear how, if anything's corny or not. Screw corny. The dramatics of magic is corny. Okay. And there's corny, phony, and phony the real deal. And I know this would embarrass him if maybe going off talking about him, but he's the real deal too. Anyway, so we have that. We've got Abramelon's idea of an operator and a procedure. We've got Polk Runyon, and if you don't see your own face in the mirror, if your right hemisphere isn't activated enough or relaxed enough to see your own face, Polk took it one step further, and joining the magician in the circle is a receiver, the equivalent of of an of-age child, okay? And the receiver holds two candles in front of the receiver's face, and the receiver is allowed to drift into sort of a hypnotic state, while the magician is in the background doing all of the conjurations and drawing the sigils over the top of the head of the receiver. So all of the left hemisphere heavy lifting is being done by the magician, who wants to get some information or wants to send something off, and the receiver voluntarily is saying, okay, I will enter into this passive state long enough to serve as a receiver. And it's the receiver that sees the spirit in the receiver's face. But it's in essence one magician with one big brain. Okay. So that's that. Now, when we started doing Enochian magic at Monday Night Magic class for, I guess, 3 years straight, and 2 of those years it was 2 nights a week, we did the Enochian calls to receive visions for at first various sections of the elemental tablets, and there's a quite straightforward technique of what calls open up what elements and sub-elements and things like that, and each of those elements and sub-elements and sub-elements has a modular fractal portion of force and energy, which could be called an angelic intelligence. And every week we'd have somebody else sort of sit in the driver's seat and look into the black mirror. And this isn't a triangular mirror. This is a whole different setup, using a holy table and the sigillum and the black mirror, and it's different than Solomonic magic. And everybody got a chance to sit in the driver's seat, and some were more successful than others. But David Paul Wilson, who is a member of our class and of our Lodge of OTO, proved to be the most successful of the scryers, of the receivers. He was naturally clairvoyant, and this we sort of just all discovered in the process of the class, learning all of this stuff together. And he could easily fall into trance, and his trances, the intelligences that he seemed to be in touch with, were remarkably compatible with the element or sub-element that we were working with. I mean, it really felt like, this guy's really plugged into what we're doing, and what we're doing is really plugged into this system. Part of David's talent was that his mind was rich in visual imagery. He had seen every movie that had ever come out in his life, and I think he was probably pushing 30, and he loved music. Movies. He loved stories, and he was very, very well read, especially of the classics. So an example is when we did scrying sessions with a spirit that could show previous incarnations. David could more or less identify or pinpoint the year of the vision that he was having of someone's previous incarnation. He could pinpoint the year by the buckles on the shoes of characters in the vision that he was seeing. And so he was already loaded with a vocabulary of these visual images, and it just fell perfectly into place for working. And so most of the time, once we found David's talent, he was our main scryer, probably at least 80% of the time. And a lot of it I've itemized in Enochian Vision Magic and in other places. But my point is, this operator procedure receiver thing is really sound magic. And as long as it doesn't become a situation where you've got a megalomaniac operator trying to subjugate the receiver's will to his own, as long as it's not a situation where the receiver is turning over their will to a higher as long as that relationship is wholesome. As far as for the time period of this operation, we are operating cooperatively. We're both the magician. We're both the operator. But for the time being, you do this heavy lifting, I do this heavy seeing. And that's more or less what was happening when Crowley discovered that his wife Rose could easily fall into a state like that. And that as big of an ego as Crowley had, he saw where his shortcomings were, and his shortcomings was he could not easily drift into that state where he could simultaneously be the operator and the receiver, at least not yet. And so when we hear about the reception of the Book of the Law and the period of time there in Cairo where Rose was falling into visions and having messages from Horus and speaking, letting Iwas speak through her, we've got this idea of the operator-receiver going on. And Crowley projected that onto his own personal mythos as the beast and the scarlet woman, because ultimately, way down in a more personal level, but still it is a reflection of what's going on between Hokmah and Binah on the tree of life, those levels of consciousness of number 1 and number 2 and number 3 on the tree of life. The receiver being Binah, the operator being Hokmah. And both of them operating in tandem as a expression of number 1, together. Be that as it may, that's all I wanted to say this morning. Last evening, Constance and I joined other local Thelemites, and our good friend Colin Campbell visited from New Hampshire. And we visited and had a sort of just a social hour at 418 Oasis OTO here in Sacramento. They've got a new facility, a new temple space, and they're opening up to more in-person events. And Constance made banana bread, which I hope there's still some left. But Anyway, we had a good time, and I got to tell the stele story, which what we call it, which is the little 5-minute lecture, well, sometimes a 10-minute lecture of the circumstances surrounding Crowley's marriage, the reception of the Book of the Law, and what the characters on the stele is. It's something that I do after every Minerval initiation, but before dinner. So I did that thing. And Constance says, "Oh, do the Rose Crowley poem. Do your Rose Crowley poem." And I guess I'm old. I can't do it from memory. You know, if someone would have fed me the first line of it, I probably could have recited it. But I looked it up again, and I'm going to close today's talk with it. I've done it on these morning things at least a couple times. But anyway, and also I posted a beautiful somebody who on some podcast recited it, recorded it, and I put the link on it with a beautiful, beautiful English accent and kind of spooky music in the background. It's really, really cool. But here it is. I call it More Than Balls. Buddha sat down all alone beneath the Bodhi tree and did not get up till he was wise. Well, maybe once to pee. Muhammad's cave was very small. There was only room for one. And Jesus prayed alone all night. He was God's only son. Joseph Smith was by himself when he bumped into Moroni. No one helped him write that book, but he was such a phony. These were men, old Aeon guys. They weren't at all romantic. Some were evil, some insane, and all of them pedantic. But for this age, it took more than balls to show us all what's holy. It took more than Iwas and Uncle Al. It took Rose Kelly Crowley. And that's where we'll end it today. I'm still preparing for my 2 talks at ThelimaCon. So I'm going to be busy the rest of the day. Until tomorrow. Oh, incidentally, I think my talk is at 11 o'clock, so I'll be okay. I should be with us at 10, but they may be little short talks tomorrow and Sunday. Until then, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love and your will.